You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
And when everyone's super,
No one will be.
Where's your kid now, Sheriff?
Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. A couple months ago I made a video ranking all the different Pixar movies, so today I wanted to do one very similar and rank all the Pixar villains. In this video, only one villain per movie is being considered, and not all the movies have villains, so not all of the movies will be represented. But I hope you enjoy. Subscribe if you do, because that really helps my channel, and let's get started.
Silenzio Bruno! Silenzio Bruno!
So I do have two honorable mentions for this list, and I'll start with the first one, which is the village in Luca. This one's an honorable mention because there isn't really a true villain in Luca. Like, there's that bully kid, but I don't think he's a villain. You could say the entire village is the villain, but that doesn't really fit with the rest of this list. It just doesn't work very well. And the other one is an elemental, and I guess racism, which, let's be real, tops the list, but it doesn't really work as a villain. It's only an honorable mention on this list because, I don't know, prejudice and racism isn't a actual person, so it's hard to say it's one villain. And while prejudice and racism are both awful things, they're more abstract than just a specific character, but those are my honorable mentions. Alright, starting the list at the bottom at number 25, I have the Cursed Dragon from Onward. This villain ends up at the bottom of the list for a few main reasons. One of the big reasons why this one and the one right above it are at the bottom is that it doesn't talk during the movie at all. Another reason why it's so low is just of how short of a time it spends on screen. Like, it's barely there at all. The dragon just kind of shows up at the end, they fight, and it disappears. It doesn't help that I don't like this movie in general, but I bet you'd have a very hard time finding anyone that really thinks this is the best villain in Pixar. This whole movie felt very, I don't know, half-assed. Maybe that's the best way to put it. They're like, okay, we got two good voice actors, so we don't have to think about anything else. And one of the things that they really didn't think about was the Cursed Dragon as their villain, because it was just pretty dang lame. Barely above it at number 24 is Mor'du from Brave. This is another villain who doesn't have any words in the movie, and that does not help at all. And I know it may be silly, but if a villain isn't saying anything villainous in the movie, it really lowers my liking for them. Mor'du's just a big scary bear at the end of the day. And while that could be very interesting, I find it pretty boring. Like, there are big scary bears around, like, within a couple 100 miles of where I live, you know? And they're not villains of Pixar movies. He's better than the Cursed Dragon, though, and he gets a lot more screen time than him, too. I was actually surprised to see how low I ranked him, but looking over the list, I think he belongs pretty low. The best part of villains are their speeches, and when a villain can't talk, it just drags them down so much for me. So I can't put Mor'du any higher, even though he has killed people, unlike some of the others on this list.
No idea what a pleasure it is for me to finally beat you.
Oh, thanks. Wait.
At number 23, I have Jackson Storm from Cars 3. Looking back, it's kind of funny putting Mor'du below Jackson Storm. But at the end of the day, he's more than just a big scary bear. Jackson Storm was a dick, don't get me wrong. He was arrogant, a jerk, and incredibly selfish. He was essentially what I think Lightning McQueen would have been like if he didn't go to Radiator Springs in the first movie. He's so misogynistic, not believing that cars like Crew should be out there on the track with him. He's just a way less interesting chick Hicks, so he makes this list, but really not much more can be said about him as a villain, but at the very, very least, he talks, so he's above the other two.
Hey, where you going, friend?
At number 22, in the most forgettable movie in all of Pixar, we have Thunderclap from The Good Dinosaur. The biggest thing holding this character back was the crappy movie he was in. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he'd be much better if he was in, like, The Godfather Part 2, but The Good Dinosaur was just such a terrible movie. He was kind of scary, just trying to eat the main character and his little human friend. So, while Jackson is the lowest villain that can talk, Thunderclap is the lowest one that can talk and is, like, even somewhat threatening. I wish I had more to say about this character, but I truly barely remember this movie at this point, and I only watched it a couple months ago. Thunderclap was just nothing, really.
gonna be you.
Well, if you're not gonna be me, you're not gonna be anyone.
At number 21, I have Zurg from Lightyear. This was such a boring villain. I think they really banked on the fact that they thought the twist villain was so clever. Here's a spoiler warning for now, like if you didn't know that Zurg is Buzz in the future, it's not even worth spoiling. It's dumb, predictable, and did not make the movie better at all. I thought them fighting was kind of fun, but the fact that there isn't any cool, interesting lore of this universe doesn't help. If this was a franchise like Captain America, where he ends up fighting his future self, that'd be cool. But the fact that it's such an empty, uninteresting universe makes this twist just not work, and this villain not work, because Zurg is lame, and the Lightyear movie is just not very good.
Very, very good to be here. Now listen to me. Big oil. It costs a fortune. Pollution is getting worse. I mean, come on.
At number 20, I have Sir Miles Axelrod from Cars 2. This is the first of the okay villains on this list. One of my favorite things about it is the twist. They hid Axelrod being a bad guy actually really well. He was taking out different cars just to make himself even richer than he already is. Who would have thought that the villain was going to be a multi-millionaire, if not billionaire? Millionaires are villains both inside and outside of movies. The main reason he's higher than some of the ones below him is how good they did the twist with him. But at the very end of the day, he was just an okay villain overall. He wasn't really scary. He was just, I don't know, another rich guy telling people what to do. And he took out some cars with him.
The temperature around you is well below freezing. Try to stretch and you'll break.
At number 19, I have Evelyn Dever from Incredibles 2. I hated that this movie tried to make a twist villain, but named the character basically Evil Endeavor. She was lame, but not as bad as some of the ones below her. She at the very least had a plan that made a lot of superheroes come under her control. And she was honestly very close to completing her plan. How could she have guessed that there was a couple of super kids that were going to ruin everything for her? She wasn't a physically scary villain. She was the type who planned and strategized, and that's even scarier most of the time. One of the worst things for her was trying to follow up Syndrome, because he was a really good villain. We'll talk about him later. But honestly, trying to do a twist villain and naming him something like Bad Guy, it's crazy. It's so silly, and I can't believe they tried. We're smarter than this. Even kids are smarter than that. Come on.
Johnny Worthington, president of Roar Omega Roar.
At number 18, I have Johnny Worthington III from Monsters University. Johnny was such a funny villain because at the end of the day, he was just kind of a jerk. Like, he was a rich bully kid that had only gotten ahead in life because he was rich. He's probably the most real villain on this list because everyone knows someone like him, someone who just uses their money and status to claim that they're better than someone else. And I don't know. That's really bad. This usually comes from insecurity, but they didn't go down that rabbit hole in this movie. They didn't really give him a way to redeem himself. He was just kind of a dick. He wasn't one of the evil villains on this list, but I thought he was a lot more fun than some of the others. That and him being such a realistic bully helped him be slightly higher on this list than people like Evelyn or Zurg.
We were just out for my early morning stroll.
At number 17, I have Gabby Gabby from Toy Story 4. God, it still irritates me so much that this movie was made in the first place. They finished it out perfectly in the third, and now they're even making a fifth one. But that's besides the point. This is supposed to be about Gabby Gabby. One thing that really helped her get placed near the middle of this list was that she was a sympathetic villain. She wanted to take Woody's voice box so that someone would want to buy her and love her. The way she goes about it is not great, though. She bullies and tries to take it by force. She has a team of goons that she has tried to help her try to do that. But honestly, she was desperate. Jessie very well could have ended up this way if she was never found by Woody and brought into their family. So what she did made sense, unfortunately, but she was still doing bad things. A good villain always has a reason for why they become a villain in the first place, and that is no exception for Gabby Gabby.
You prepared to become the greatest war machine in the universe?
At number 16, I have Lord Gregon from Elio. So I just watched this movie for the very first time, so it's very fresh in my mind. It's not half bad, by the way. But we are introduced to Lord Gregon as a literal warlord. All he cares about is ruling and conquering different places. Well, that's what we think at first, but he has some very good character development. And that is especially shown at the very end of the movie, because Gregon is a father, and his son has always kind of been a disappointment to him. Or at least that's what the son thinks. They live in these mech suits that are made to like kill and destroy, and they never leave them. But as his son is dying because he's too cold, he tears his suit off of himself just to go warm up his kid himself. It's a really sweet scene that boosted his ranking on this list, because it shows that even if you are a scary warlord, you could be soft for your children. You could still be a good father. And I don't know, this really took a turn for him, and it was at the very last second. At number 15, I have Terry from Soul. At the end of the day, Terry was just doing her job. But another way to look at it, she was just following orders. Sound familiar? Sounds like a soldier from the 1940s to me. In all seriousness, Terry was more of an antagonist than a straight-up villain, but I really liked her, so she made it above some of the other characters on this list. Her job as an accountant in their world is to count souls. So when Joe decides to run away from the stairs, Terry had one job to do, and it was to bring him back. Terry was a fun character to me, and the only reason she is considered a villain is because she was trying to stop Joe from cheating death, which is fair. But, I don't know, Terry kind of had a rough deal trying to deal with this stuff, but at the end of the day, made it to the middle of the list. At number 14, I have Otto from WALL-E. What? An AI that is evil and the villain? How could this be? Otto was scary in WALL-E, especially because of how important AI and technology was by the time this movie took place. The idea of technology having a mind of its own and taking control of our society isn't only scary, but is also well on its way to possibly happening. Otto just didn't completely understand a direction as far as I can remember the movie. She thought she needed to keep the humans away from Earth because they were destroying it. They never thought it was possible they were going to be able to go back, so they lied about her real function. No one could have predicted that the disgusting version of Earth in their future could possibly grow plants again. So she was a very realistic and scary villain, and one that I could see happening in real life in the next, 5-10 years. I hope not, but I'm ready.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Find a happy place, find a happy place.
At number 13, I have Darla from Finding Nemo. Now we have a serial killer on our hands. Darla is a walking terror for basically anything with gills, and that includes Aquaman. In Finding Nemo, we see multiple examples of her getting a fish from her uncle and killing it before she gets out the door. You may think that's not her fault because she's just a kid, and I agree to a point. 1, maybe even 2 times is understandable. But after that, she sure knew what she was doing, and she was actively just abusing animals, which is one of the 3 signs of being a serial killer. What's funny is that she may have one of the highest kill counts of anyone on this list. And let's be real, it's probably not just fish that Darla is killing by the time she grew up. I just know there's an episode of Criminal Minds or Dexter where she gets arrested as a serial killer.
Oh, sorry, I'm not perfect. Sorry, I'm not good enough.
At number 12, I have Ming Lee from Turning Red. I am so sorry to everyone watching this that has a mom like this. Luckily, I don't, because I hated Ming Lee. Do you know how bad of a mom you have to be considered the villain of a movie? She's controlling and a total bitch this entire time. She is the whole reason this movie is happening. Her not letting her daughter grow up, and it's causing so many issues that she's ignoring because she's so overprotective. There is a huge conflict that happens because of this. I haven't been this frustrated with a family member in an animated movie since Abuela in Encanto. Ming Lee sucked, and she kind of learned her lesson, but I feel like she didn't. She may have changed, but I don't know. She rubbed me the wrong way the entire movie, and I think it alone made me dislike this movie more than I would have. And I don't dislike it, but I hate Ming Lee.
I'd reasoning with you, Woody, but you keep forcing me to take extreme measures.
At number 11, I have the Prospector from Toy Story 2. When I say I wanted to throw hands with this old, smelly, fat toy, I mean it. He was such a loser. He had the exact same problem that Jesse did, but instead of just crying about it, which is also annoying to be fair, he was gaslighting everyone and was so close to winning. If Woody didn't have a legitimate family that came after him, he would be chilling in a museum in Japan to this day. The Prospector was smart. He waited until the very last second to even let anyone know his plan. He spent most of the movie gaslighting Woody and Jesse into fighting. He even had Woody convinced at one point that he'd be better off in Japan. He was so close to getting everything he wanted, and he was a pretty good villain. Though the worst of the original Toy Story trilogy, but that's because there were some pretty great villains. The Prospector, at the end of the day, just, I don't know, used gaslighting and manipulation to really further along his plans and wants.
Now's the time to send up every possible thing that could go wrong. We are looking to the future.
At number 10, I have Anxiety from Inside Out 2. This is the villain that I wanted to fight more than, I think, most on this list, probably all. I just know that that little gremlin inside my head has been causing chaos for my entire life. Prozac doesn't have anything that can take care of anxiety. And in Riley's head, she was just causing problems the entire time. To be fair, it's not like everything was going okay for her in her head before that, but she definitely showed up and just made literally everything worse. She locked up the other emotions, which is crazy. Like, imagine showing up to your new job, within a week you kidnap your boss and the other employees and just lock them in a spare closet. Because that's what she did. Or, I don't know if it's a she. Yes, she's at least voiced by a girl. But I hate Anxiety. The character and the feeling, so goddamn much. If we ever get the technology to go into movies someday, it's going to be on site. I am going to take out Anxiety with, like, a flying elbow immediately. At number 9, I have Chick Hicks from Cars. It is so funny to me that Chick made it this high, especially because he's like the same as Jackson Storm, but a little bit more of a jerk. Like, him crashing the King was definitely a shitty move, but in their world, that'd be like tripping someone mid-race and they sprain their knee, sprain their ankle, whatever. But Chick is such a funny character. He knew how to get under Lightning's skin so bad. There's nothing better than a villain who loses no matter what, and that's who Chick Hicks is to me, like, to a T. To this day, whenever I'm making fun of someone for getting second place, I call them Chick Hicks, because that's who he is. He will always be second. Chick was just a driving rage bait car that was destined to never win. And oddly enough, saying that, he did technically win a Piston Cup. But instead of love and adoration that he expected, everyone just hated him because of how he did it. And let me end with this. Chick was definitely dropping car-related slurs on the track constantly. I can't prove that, but I don't know if I need proof.
But they soon find that this mountain is a very dangerous place.
At number 8, I have Charles Muntz from Up. Charles wasn't around a ton in the movie, but he racked up a pretty large body count in his life. He was killing all the other adventurers that were coming looking for the bird. It didn't say how many people he killed, but I'd say around 20 plus probably. He had been there for like 60 years, so that makes sense. And he took care of every single one of his competitors. The thing that made Muntz more of a good villain, though, was how much Carl looked up to him as a kid. He was the single reason that both Ellie and Carl wanted to be adventurers and to go to Paradise Falls in the first place. Muntz was their entire inspiration. He also was super friendly to Carl and Russell when they arrived. He was so friendly until like a flip switched and he turned into another person who was even willing to kill a kid in all of this, which is crazy. Muntz was a great villain and the start of the good villains on this list.
Get my lawyer.
At number 7, I have Chef Skinner from Ratatouille. The very best part about Chef Skinner as a villain is that he was 100% right. He didn't always go about it the right way, but of course you shouldn't want a rat in your fancy French restaurant. He was trying to make sure the restaurant didn't get shut down. I personally don't care how good the food was, or even if it was free. If I find out that a rat cooked it, I'm going on a warpath to make sure this restaurant closes forever. He wasn't right to hide from Linguini that the restaurant was supposed to be his, but I get that he didn't want some random guy who didn't know anything about cooking or running a restaurant to take over. Because, I don't know, that would just ruin it. He got gaslit so many times about Remy, it just always cracked me up. He literally saw him talking to Linguini at one point in the fridge. Linguini turns off the light and he was just gone. He just made him disappear. Skinner was such a fun villain, and him being French just made it like 200 times better.
She don't love you no more. Now come on!
At number 6, I have Lotso from Toy Story 3. Lotso was a straight up crime boss in this movie. He was basically Tony Soprano, and it was amazing. He ruled that daycare with an iron fist and even had a team of goons around him making sure that he stayed in power the entire time. He did such a good job at first making everyone think that he was a good guy. He made them feel welcome and like they were all part of a family. But just like months, he was able to completely turn it off. He turned off the good guy shtick like it was nothing. He was my second favorite villain in the Toy Story universe too, which is pretty cool. And there's one scene that really cements that for me. At the very end, Lotso was saved by the gang and gets out of the garbage. Everyone is on a conveyor belt of death, essentially. And they get Lotso out to go save him, and instead of pushing the button to stop it, he says, "So long, boys," and saved himself. This was such a cold scene, and it made him such a good villain to me. That was really what did it for me.
Whatever it takes.
Now, starting our top 5, at number 5, I have Ernesto de la Cruz from Coco. This was the best done twist villain in Pixar, in my opinion, because most of the movie you didn't even realize that there was a villain. Miguel was just traveling around with some guy that we didn't know, but the fact that the random guy ended up being his grandpa was such a good twist. And the fact that Hector, who was the grandpa, not only knew Ernesto, but Ernesto was the one who killed him, and he didn't even know that. That scene where we learned was so good, and it was devastating for Miguel. He just found out about his grandpa, and he was so excited to think that his grandpa was this famous musician. He was so excited to find a family member that loved music as much as he did, which was rare, because he really, really liked it. But then he finds out the truth. Ernesto is a fraud, and his grandpa was actually Hector, the bum guy he'd been hanging out with. Not only that, but Hector was the one who had written all the songs, and he should be the one that was world famous, not Ernesto. The great storytelling really set Ernesto aside as one of the top 5 Pixar villains ever for me. I thought it was so good, and I love how he got his comeuppance in the real world and then in the same way in the afterlife.
Where are your rebel friends now?
At number 4, I have Sid from Toy Story. Finally, we have gotten to the best villain in the Toy Story franchise. Sid was a sadistic little kid. He didn't know toys were real and living, but he still ended up torturing and mutilating so many of them. If he was aware that the toys could talk and think, I think he'd probably move up a few spaces on this list, because he was like blowing stuff up, and if you're blowing something up that is alive, you're a psychopath. He was such a creepy and angry kid. Even if he didn't dismember so many toys, he'd still be a villain anyways, just for how he treats his sister and everyone around him. He was such a dick. Sid was definitely a future serial killer. He was blowing stuff up, pretending to torture people, and just all around being sadistic. Him and Darla from Finding Nemo would have made for a nice couple, actually, because they would just go around killing people. I'm convinced that they're both little psychopaths. Sid was a great first villain for Pixar, and I think he really set the standards high for the rest of the Pixar movie universe. He, raised that bar.
Empty! It'll be empty, you idiot! You see that clock?
Now for our top 3. At number 3, I have Randall from Monsters, Inc. Randall was such a snake. He was willing to do anything in order to get ahead. He was even willing to kidnap and torture kids. So unlike toys, he was torturing kids. And I feared that plan would have led to them getting rid of the kids, or at the very least, those kids were pretty permanently messed up after dealing with that machine. He was constantly conniving and planning on how he can do evil stuff. It was hard picking between him and Waternoose to see who would be the villain from Monsters, Inc. That I would talk about, but like, Waternoose was more in it for the money. I think Randall was in it for the love of the game. He was kind of crazy. But something about Randall, about everything Randall did, just rubbed me the wrong way. He was such an evil little lizard. He made the movie so much better than I would have ever thought it could have been. I really think that Monsters University giving Randall a bit of a backstory was a mistake. Unless the backstory is really interesting or cool, you should just keep the villains a mystery. That way they seem more evil than they could have been. But overall, Randall definitely deserves to be in the top 3. And he was scary. He was just, him being able to turn invisible was really scary. I do love how he eventually met his end by someone beating him thinking he was an alligator. I love that.
What's the matter? You scared of grasshoppers?
At number 2, I have Hopper from A Bug's Life. Hopper was the ultimate threatening villain in Pixar. He had complete control of all of the ants, and he ruled with an iron fist. The best part about him as a villain is that he understands that they can only rule through fear. The second the ants realize that they outnumber the grasshoppers like 100 to 1, then they could just take their food back and win. But if he could convince them to stay scared and separated, then he could continue to rule. It's actually a great analogy for billionaires and the rest of the world. The second we realize they need us more than we need them, it's over. Hopper had a great grasp on how fear and like how he could use it to gain and keep power. And that's terrifying. He was just a bully that wanted control, and it was going on for a long time before the ants finally learned to fight back against him. And he was voiced by a real-life supervillain, Kevin Spacey. And honestly, if he was on this list, he would easily be number 1 as the worst villain.
I'm your #1 fan!
Finally, at number 1, I have Syndrome from The Incredibles. Now for the greatest villain in all of Pixar. Syndrome was petty, evil, and a literal serial killer. I joked about it before, but he's an actual serial killer. That one scene in the computer area showed us that tons and tons of superheroes were killed by Syndrome. He basically ran a superhero genocide for 5 years and only got caught because he picked a fight with an entire super family instead of just one hero. I love the backstory of why Syndrome became evil. He loved Mr. Incredible so much, he just wanted to be a superhero just like him. But because of Mr. Incredible's brutal rejection, he decided to make his life go another way and to become a supervillain. Which really sucks because, I don't know, with his mind and his skills in inventing, he could have been another like Edna Mode. He could have worked for, or even been a superhero himself, but it didn't work out. Since he was rejected, he grew spiteful and just wanted revenge. All he wanted to do was kill Mr. Incredible. And at the very end, when he stole Jack, he almost got away with a brand new supervillain sidekick. So not only was he a great supervillain, but he was the most well thought out and fleshed out villain on this list by far. I think Syndrome is fantastic, and him being so good is probably the biggest reason why Incredibles 2 didn't work, because they didn't have a villain nearly as good as him. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Who's your favorite Pixar villain? Was it one that I hated? Comment below and let me know, and subscribe for more. Have a great day, and I will see you next week. Bye.